Teresa Tomeo, and Call to Communion with Dr. David Anders starts now.
What's stopping you from becoming a Catholic?
Why can't women become priests?
1-833-288-EWTN.
I don't understand why I have to earn salvation.
1-833-288-3986.
What's stopping you?
Why do I need to confess my sins to a priest?
What's stopping you? This is Called to Communion with Dr. David Anders on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Hey, welcome to another week of Call to Communion here on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. We are delighted to bring you this program each and every Monday through Friday at this time, 2 p.m. Eastern, with the encore at 11 p.m. Eastern, and it's specifically a program for our non-Catholic brothers and sisters. So if you're not a Catholic and you've got a question about the Catholic faith, here's our phone number, 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. You might also tell us what is keeping you from becoming a Catholic. Again, the number 833-288-EWTN. You can also text the letters EWTN to 55000. Wait for our response and then text us your first name and your brief question. Message and data rates may apply. Again, that number, 833-288-EWTN. We are very pleased to have Sir Charles Beery as our producer. Also, Ryan Penny is our phone screener. Jeff Burson is on social media. He'll be glad to pass along any questions you may have, that you may want to pose, via YouTube or Facebook. We are streaming live on those additional venues right now. I'm Tom Price, along with Dr. David Anders.
Tom, how are you?
I'm good. How was your weekend?
You know, we had the Eucharistic Congress of the Diocese of Birmingham. First ever in, I said to several people, I think since Adam and Eve and the creation of the world, it has never happened that a Catholic bishop has led 3,000 people in Eucharistic adoration and procession through the streets of Birmingham. So that was kind of awesome.
I believe it was Alex Kubik, who was one of the behind-the-scenes people that we were blessed to interview on Saturday for our broadcast. He said, I was standing there in front of this was right after the Eucharistic procession, and he said, I was standing there looking at all these thousands of people who were marching in the streets of Birmingham to show their solidarity with Catholicism, and there I was standing at the very spot where 100 years ago a priest was gunned down while he was sitting on his front porch, praying.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
We've come a long way.
We've come a long way. Yeah.
Come a long, long way. Yeah, we were glad to broadcast from there. Something upwards of 4,000 people in attendance at the final Mass. I don't know if you were privy to those numbers, but it was...
I wasn't privy to the numbers, but I was privy to the Mass.
Yeah.
It was massive.
Very good. Yeah. So anyway, a great success. All praise and honor to our Lord and Savior. So we're going to
hats off to Bishop Baker too.
Absolutely.
Because it was his brainchild.
Well, it was one of the people there who came up to the bishop as I was talking with him. And he said, "Hey, Bishop, you really throw a great party." I thought that was great. So we're getting calls screened even as we speak at 833-288-EWTN. Here is a question now from email. Ivan wants to know, what is the best way to discredit Sedevacantism beliefs? I know that they're wrong, and they use a lot of quotes from ecumenical councils out of context. First of all, David, what are we talking about here, Sedevacantism?
Sedevacantists are people that believe that there is presently no pope.
Wow.
No pope. That's what they think.
That's some powerful denial going on there.
So the first thing you need to do with your Sedevacantist friends is you need to stop a cab driver in the street and say, "Who's the Pope?" and see what he says.
Yep.
All right, and then try 3 or 4. Right, and I'm guessing that probably most places in the world, you're going to get at least 85% the right answer. Okay, even from non-Catholics, from atheists, they're gonna, and perhaps they don't know his name, but they'll be like, "You talking about the guy that wears the funny hats and stuff and lives in Rome? That guy?"
Even North Korea got a shout out from the Pope.
All right,
for that summit meeting.
So the first, it's just you just like that dude in Rome, like Pope, okay?
Yeah.
More to the point, stop a Catholic bishop and ask him who the Pope is. And ask him whether or not he regards the papal election as valid. Like, did we actually install a Pope in Rome? All right? And at a certain point, you're going to realize that the number of people who believe that there's not a valid Pope are probably similar, but both in number and character, to people who believe in a flat Earth.
Yeah.
Right? And it's something, I think a similar kind of spirit animates, there's kind of a deeply ideological, sort of culturally transgressive attitude that, motivates the same kind of conspiratorial thinking, that sort of stuff. But there's actually a profound theological point here as well. St. Augustine had to deal with this problem, not Sedevacantism specifically, but an ideology that was similar. A group of people, Catholics, or Christians rather, in North Africa who wanted to set themselves up as the arbiters of Catholic truth in contradistinction from the rest of the Christian world. They were called Donatists. And their position was that we alone have got the real stuff. We are the only pure ones. Everybody else is corrupted or has lost the thread in some respect or another. And Augustine said, guys, you're just in North Africa. By definition, you can't be the universal church. You can't be, that's what Catholic means. You can't be the universal church because you're just in North Africa.
Yeah.
But the verdict of the whole world is conclusive. It's one of the great quotes. This is what converted Cardinal Newman, Securus judicat orbis terrarum. The verdict of the whole world is conclusive, right? And, Christ didn't appoint you the rock of the church's unity. He gave that job description to somebody else. And folks, the verdict of the whole world is conclusive. It's not your job to be the authoritative interpreter of the Christian faith and tradition. Yeah.
Ivan, we hope that's helpful for you. Thank you so much for your email. If you'd like to send us an email for a future show, love to hear from you. ctc@ewtn.com, ctc@ewtn.com. Well, we have open phone lines for you right now. If you'd like to give us a call, here's your opportunity. 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. In a moment, we'll be talking with Celeste in Denver, listening on Catholic Radio Network. Line open for you, 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986 on EWTN's Call to Communion.
Vatican officials will meet to decide the fate of disgraced former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick.
Pro-life leaders applauding the president's strong stand for life.
A new poll finds most Americans, including those identifying as pro-choice, are opposed to late-term abortion.
And Pope Francis says the death penalty is contrary to the gospel.
News headlines you can have faith in. Weekdays at the top of the hour on EWTN Radio.
Father John Riccardo.
God reveals himself by repeatedly breaking into people's lives. He says to Abraham, I'm going to make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the shore. I want to make a covenant with you. I'm going to enter into a relationship with you. I call you into friendship. I want you to know me. He does it because he wants the individual or the individuals to know him, because that's why we're here. But he also does it so that they will help others to know him, so that they will tell others about the one that they've met, the one who's spoken to them, the one who has done great things on their behalf. Because faith isn't private, it's meant to be shared. That's why he reveals himself to us. The saving deeds that we see God do in the Old Testament, which give us access to his identity and to who he is, all find their fulfillment in Jesus.
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
Tonight on the Journey Home with Marcus Grodi, Jeff Cavins is going to be around. We haven't seen Jeff in a little while, but it'll be great to see him again. He's going to be sharing about how he became a Catholic, and his story is fascinating. So do check it out tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio and Television, The Journey Home with Marcus Grodi. And if you're ready now, let's get to the phones at 833-288-EWTN. We begin with Celeste in Denver. She's listening on Catholic Radio Network. Celeste, what's on your mind today?
Well, good afternoon. I am having the pleasure of a discussion with a Jewish man. He's a friend I've met through my walking in the morning in the park, and I am Catholic, a cradle Catholic, and committed to my faith, but he asked me this morning about the Trinity, and he was confusing the Trinity with, understandably so, at his level of understanding, with that we worship three gods, or that how can there not be three gods if we call them God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And I was hoping Dr. David Anders could help me with a pithy explanation that would satisfy him at least at some level.
I think you're good at pithy, aren't you?
Well, you know, we are now talking about the fundamental mystery of the faith. So,
yes.
So when you're talking about the dogma of the Trinity to unbelievers, I think it's helpful to back up a little bit and talk about how we know things that appear mysterious to us, right? And that we encounter mysteries all over the place. Mysteries abound in all of our experiences. And, you know, lying at the base of, just to take one analogy, our whole physical understanding of the world that's revealed to us by science, quantum physics, for example. You take something like the double slit experiment, where you're like, well, did the electron go left or right? Yes. Okay. And you know, great physicists like Richard Feynman say the results are impossible. Like, they shouldn't happen. There's no coherent way of explaining this, you know, in classical terms. It's an apparent paradox, and yet there it is. There's the thing. There's the reality. All right. Yeah. The fact of consciousness, the fact that we think at all, that we're thinking meat, right, is obscure. It's mysterious. It baffles the ability of scientists and philosophers to explain. But here I am thinking. I'm doing it, right? And so mysteries are all over the place. So simply because the Christian faith proclaims that at the depth of everything there lies an unintelligible mystery, a paradox of, well, not a true paradox, but an apparent paradox of unity and plurality, that a fact should not offend. It's just the kind of weirdness that reality would lead us to imagine must be at the root of all things, right? Reality is so much bigger than our rational categories. We do the best to grasp it. So that's the first approach. Secondly, let's get a bit more specific. Are there things that appear to us as impossible? When we add a point of view, suddenly they are seen as possible. Do we have those kinds of experiences? Well, sure, all the time. Let me give you an example. Can something be a rectangle and a circle at the same time? Well, you say, absolutely not. That doesn't make any sense. Can't have a rectangle and a circle the same. Totally different. Totally different. Well, what about a cylinder? And you say, Anders, you're cheating. You didn't tell me we were going from 2 dimensions to 3, right? But sure, you add a point of view. You add an element of like a different perspective, a different dimension to my analysis. Suddenly the paradoxical becomes evident, right? Yeah. The famous science fiction novel Flatland was meant to illustrate this dynamic that, you know, from the point of view of a 2-dimensional being, you know, the idea of a sphere is unintelligible. If you can only see in 2 dimensions, you can't understand what a sphere is. You can just see a dot and then a circle getting bigger and then smaller and then another dot. All right. Can something be 3 in 1? Well, that's absolutely impossible. Okay, what if I add a dimension? What if I add a distinction? Let's do that. In what manner is God one? God is absolutely one in his essence or nature. There's only one of him.
Right.
Right. In what respect is God 3? In person. So that the distinctions that we posit, we affirm, I should say, in the Godhead are not, they're not concrete entities. Father over here, Son over there, Spirit over there, as if they were three beings. We're saying that we know what relation is. Relation is so let's, when I know something, when I know my coffee cup, or when I know Tom Price, all right, I have the experience of being a subjective experiencing self, and then there's the object that I'm knowing, like there's Tom and I'm looking at him and knowing him, but I also can know Tom in a second person way. I can know Tom as a you, not just as an it. And Tom can know me as a you and not just as an it. All right. So in the one act of my knowing Tom, I've got the first person point of view, I've got the second person point of view, I've got the third person point of view. Well, nothing can exist in reality. Nothing can exist in reality without it pre-existing in some way in God, because everything comes from God, right?
Sure.
So the first person point of view, the third person point of view, the second person point of view, to a certain extent, somehow, even if imminently, if not formally, have to exist in the Godhead, right? And what you have in the Godhead is you have that second person point of view. You have that I-thou relationship as intrinsic to his nature without there being, like there's a Tom over here and a Dave over there, without there being that substantive difference. In Tom and me, there's a being over here and there's a being over there, and that's what sets up the possibility of I-thou. But God's got I-thou without there being any distinction of being or essence or nature. There's this distinction of relation without there being a distinction of essence or nature. Now, I'm using a lot of terms, and you understand what they mean, but you don't see how the thing is possible. That's why I started with saying paradoxes and mysteries abound in our experience all the time. The fact that I should say that there's something about God's nature that I can express in concepts, but I can't really grasp in a coherent idea, that should not offend, because reality's like that. So that's what we mean by the Trinity. One essence or nature, not three beings, one existing entity, and not even an entity, but the ground and condition of all entities, right? In which there is a distinction of relation, persons, okay? Do we know anything like that in our own experience? Yes, we do. Every human being who considers himself in an act of self-contemplation has something analogous. If I think of myself thinking, here am I doing the thinking, I am the object of my thinking, and I'm thinking. There's the thinking self, the self-thought, and the act of thinking. They're one thing, me.
Wow. Yeah.
And yet there is a diversity of relation in that one act of knowing.
Fascinating.
So, these are ways of approach. But at the end of the day, why does it matter? Like, why bother confessing all these mysteries about God? Why not just say God's ineffable and be done with it? Because the dogma of the Trinity illumines something for us. Something that's at the heart of Judaism, for that matter. And it's that God is love. That relation is not just an effect of God's creation, but is his essence. That God is a communion of love, that the highest cause, that the first cause, is love.
Beautiful. And we thank you so much for your call, Celeste. That opens up a line for you now, 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. It is Called to Communion with Dr. David Anders here on EWTN. We're going now to Mary in Illinois. Hello, Mary. What's on your mind today?
I have a question. They say God always answers all prayers. I've always heard that. In his own time, in his own way. Okay. Sometimes you just feel like he just doesn't hear you, he's not answering you. What I want to know is, he does answer, so you just have to be patient. Is that what it is? Say, for instance, if your daughter hasn't spoken to you in years, do you just give up hope? Or do you continue and have hope? God will answer, or surely he wouldn't let you not be able to talk to your family So I don't understand it. Just never give up hope or what? What is it? So
Mary, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. What a horrible thing to suffer. I am so sorry. And please don't lose hope. As a pastor friend of mine, who I think a lot of, says, yes, God always answers prayer, but he answers in one of three ways. Yes, not yet, and sometimes he says, I have a better plan. For God to ask us to bear suffering is unimaginable. We can't fathom it. But sometimes God asks us to bear suffering, and we never know for how long. All we know is that as Catholics, when we suffer, this is for our salvation, and maybe for the salvation of our loved ones. Mm-hmm. That's a hard pill to swallow, and it's not easy to hear from somebody else, right? Especially somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
But that's the teaching of the faith. I'm so sorry for your suffering. It sounds palpable. I mean, I can hear it in your voice. But even in this mystery of suffering, God can be with you. God can express himself to you, show you things through his silence, things that you weren't expecting. And he will bring you to himself if you persevere. And your daughter too, but maybe not in the ways that you anticipate.
Mary, thank you so much for your call. We will certainly keep you and your daughter in our prayers. In a moment, we'll be getting to Alex in Los Angeles and James in Bryan, Ohio. First of all, a question from Michael checking us out today on Facebook. Michael says, people still claim that Benedict is still Pope, and there is no way he could have left his seat. So please explain that.
Some people believe the earth is flat. Right?
Yeah.
So with my very own ears, I heard Pope Benedict resign the office of Pope, which he can do on his own authority. No one can make him step down.
That's right.
He did it. He said it. And it doesn't matter what the background or circumstances or, what conditioned his reasoning. None of those things are relevant to the fact that he freely surrendered the papacy and has not raised one iota of doubt in anyone's mind directly about that. In all of his public statements and acts, his own respect that he shows toward the Holy Father, Pope Francis, all of these things are incontrovertible evidence that he acted freely and without compulsion and continues to do so, right, with the conviction that he resigned the office of the Pope.
He's given several interviews since then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to deny that is a kind of madness, I think. It's a form of ideological possession. That someone has, some conspiratorial theory that they're in love with, and they're wedded to that against all reason.
Yeah. Michael, appreciate your checking us out today on Facebook. It's Called to Communion with Dr. David Anders here on EWTN. We have a line open for you at the moment, 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Here now is Alex in Los Angeles, listening on Sirius XM 130. Hey, Alex, what's on your mind today?
Hello. My question is just, why are Orthodox not, so it's fine for Orthodox to receive communion in the Catholic Church, and so that seems to imply that that it's not sinful to be Orthodox, and I'm just wondering why it's okay to be Orthodox, or I don't know. I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, the fact that the Catholic Church permits Orthodox Christians to receive some sacraments in the Catholic Church does not mean that they are sort of fully fledged members, if you will, entitled to all the rights and privileges. This is an extraordinary, well, it's not extraordinary, but it is a deep kind of conciliatory response to Orthodoxy, signaling our very, very close communion with them and our love for them and our sense that we really are, branches from the same tree, so to speak, and manifesting our deep desire for a full communion, a complete union of those separated apostolic churches. But there remains to be objective separation, right? The church is wounded in the Orthodox Catholic divide, and so in particular in the Orthodox attitude towards the Holy See, right, and the rejection of Petron juridical authority over the universal church. I mean, this is a wound in the unity of the church. So you're asking me, would it be lawful for a Catholic to break that full unity and enter into a lesser unity with the universal church? The answer is no. It's not okay, because Christ desires that we be one in the fullest sense of the word, St. Paul too. The reason for that conciliatory gesture towards the Orthodox is a desire for a deeper and a greater union. The church doesn't express that same openness to other ecclesial bodies that are more distantly removed from Catholic unity. And I could say a lot more, but I'm getting cut off by the music.
There we go. Pray for unity. Alex, thanks for your call. Lots more straight ahead.
Mother Angelica.
We have to get back into our hearts and minds the value of life. If you don't care about the unborn, I don't think you're going to care about the elderly.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
Those who support the use of the cells and body parts of aborted babies say this is needed to help develop crucial vaccines. But the reality is it's unneeded scientific cannibalization. A polio vaccine is now made with a monkey cell line, not aborted babies. So is the new Ebola vaccine, which is 98% effective. The new shingles vaccine is engineered from hamster cells and is more effective than the one made with fetal cells. Ethical vaccines for rubella, only in Japan at this time, use alternatives with hen, quail, and rabbit cells. So does the widely available rabies vaccine. Modern medicine is making the need for aborted baby cells a thing of the past. For more information, go to lifeissues.org and click on the microphone icon.
Like us on Facebook at Life Issues and stay informed, more informed than you've ever been.
The Catechism of the Catholic Church has a great quote from St. John Chrysostom on prayer in paragraph 2744. It reads, quote, "Nothing is equal to prayer. For what is impossible, it makes possible. What is difficult, easy. For it's impossible for the man who prays eagerly and invokes God ceaselessly ever to sin," close quote. That's the power of prayer. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get to praying.
Do you think we should use gadgets during Mass and confession?
We're discussing high-tech worship on tomorrow's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie at noon Eastern.
Now back to more of Called to Communion.
It's the Monday edition of Call to Communion with Dr. David Anders here on EWTN. Our phone number 833-288-EWTN. A couple lines open right now, 833-288-3986. Back to it now for James in Bryan, Ohio, listening on the Great Redeemer Radio. Hello, James. What's on your mind today?
Well, good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call. I tried to get in on Friday afternoon and to no avail. Wasn't able to make it. Maybe that was a little bit prophetic for today, but a lot on my mind. First topic, Dr. Anders, I'm reading through your book, How the Catholic Church Saved My Marriage, and if I didn't know any better, I would say I could probably have written the first chapter all by myself. Basically, a page torn right out of my life. And as I went to church, as I'm a Protestant, from a Protestant background for the better part of 50 years, and as I got around to go to church yesterday, it was one of those days I didn't really want to go, and I just asked God for a special filling that day, for encouragement. And make a long story short, I thought, well, maybe that's a little presumptuous, and then I rephrased my prayer for nothing more than a fingerprint, that God would just show me at least a fingerprint of Himself. And again, make a long story short, we had communion yesterday, and I was just absolutely heartbroken over what I saw happening and the way it was handled, and just a lot on my mind. So I guess what I would ask for you, and I'll hang up and let you finish out the comments, but I would just ask for a special prayer for discernment as I read through your book. I'm a public and have been totally blessed so far, and I appreciate that very much.
Well, James, I really appreciate the question. I'm trying to figure out, did you say that you're still in the Protestant church, or you were Protestant and you've become Catholic?
Still Protestant, but as I read your book, just that I would have a discernment for wisdom to move toward the Catholic Church. Like I said, it's been on my mind for 4 or 5 years now. Ever since we got Catholic radio in our area, I've been listening with great interest, and just as I read through your book for wisdom.
I understand now, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let me offer a perspective for somebody who's in your point of view, and I actually get to this in the book, because there's going to come a point in your journey where this reality will force itself on you. When I grew up Protestant, I was accustomed to thinking of faith as, well, first of all, the whole show, right? Everything kind of depends on faith alone.
Mm.
And faith is a moment when you are sort of struck by some sort of divine illumination, and maybe your will and your intellect even are overwhelmed, and you just believe, right? And there's a lot in Protestant theology about faith as something that overwhelms even human freedom, right? And a great emphasis on certainty. Certainty, do I know for sure that I'm going to heaven? Do I know for sure that God exists? And the source of that certainty is seen to lodge somehow in the human heart, right? So that God moves me interiorly in some way so that I just know that these things are true. I mean, I don't know what tradition you're from, but there's an awful lot of that in a lot of forms of Protestantism, this sort of overwhelming subjective experience in the light of which I just gain certainty. All right. And in the Catholic faith, there are things of which we have certainty, dead certain on them. But the ground of our certainty is not our interior emotional experience, right? The ground of our certainty would be those things that are evident to reason,
mm-hmm.
right, and publicly. So, like, I'm certain that there was a person named Jesus from historical investigation, right? I'm certain the world exists. I'm certain there are moral absolutes. I know that there's a God. I know there's a first cause to the universe. These things of which I am certain are evident to me from the light of reason, historical, philosophical investigation, and otherwise. They don't depend on my interior life. They're publicly accessible. There are other things in the Catholic faith that I believe on authority. I'm certain of them, but the certainty takes a different character, right? I believe because God revealed it. I believe because Jesus said so. I believe because the Church teaches. Again, I have objective basis for that certainty, and it's not lodged in my own interior experience. The act of faith, however, is lodged in my interior experience. When I come to believe, I have to do the believing.
Yeah.
I'm the one that has to do the believing. I have to make a decision to act on that evidence that God has put out there in the world, both in nature and in the Church and Revelation. But I may have to act without that funny internal feeling. Am I making sense? So as a Protestant, I was so oriented towards having a kind of interior attitude or disposition, emotion, or affective state. And I thought of that emotional response as really intrinsic to the act of faith itself. Mm-hmm. So that I carried that sense with me into my pursuit of Catholicism. And when I got to the point where I realized that the Catholic Church made sense to me, objectively made sense, it was the only sensible way to be a Christian. One of the things that held me up was kind of waiting around for the Holy Spirit to make me believe.
Mm-hmm.
I had the evidence, And I was like, okay, God, do your job. Do that thing that you always did for me before when I wanted to believe something, and you brought these powerful emotions to bear and this affective state that made the thing seem overwhelming so that I get carried along without my free activity. God did not oblige, nor does he, because that's not the way Catholics operate. You get to a point where you realize, I'm going to have to make a decision, and it's got to be me making the decision. I have to own the decision, perhaps in the absence even of encouragement or hope, or not hope, but delight, or everything seeming to come together with warm rays passing out of my skull or something. That you may not have that kind of overwhelming, charismatic aha moment. You just have the authority of the Gospels and the objective reason in front of you. And you may have to make a decision in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I was. Now, I think it was the right decision. It was true. But it was a truth that I had to reach out and grab hold of, sometimes almost with no positive emotion or affection involved at all. And looking back on it, I'm so glad that it happened that way, because it helped me think through, what does it mean to relate to the church, and what's the role that my emotions play in all this. And some people talk about going to communion for the first time and their mind was blown and, stars in the sky and everything. I didn't have that experience. I went up, I received communion, I went and sat down. And that's okay. That's actually normal, and it's good, right?
Yeah.
Because grace is not something sensible. So I will pray for you, and I hope you have encouragement, and I hope you have wisdom and discernment, and I'll pray these things. But as you're making this journey, think about the fact that at some point, it's got to be you making the decision, right? Even if, all the circumstances of your life and your emotional life say, I'm uncomfortable. Jesus didn't call us to be comfortable.
As you were laying all this out, for some reason, Billy Graham popped into my head, because the name of his radio show that ran for a long time was Hour of Decision. So people have to come to that hour of decision, and there's often not a big emotional hand truck that you're carrying with you. It is that decision.
Well, I appreciate the terminology. My experience of Billy Graham and his evangelistic ministry and that whole way of approaching the Christian life,
I wasn't.
There's a different model of what faith means and how we experience it, and how we know things. So,
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I'm not gonna swallow the whole Billy Graham bag.
Well, no, it just made me think of it, because people have to come to that decision. Right. Anyway, thank you so much for your call, and we do hope that goes well for you. It is Called to Communion here on EWTN. Do have a couple lines open at the moment. 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Let's go to Steve now in Mobile, Alabama, listening on Archangel Radio, AM 1410. Steve, welcome to the program. What's on your mind today?
Well, thank you, guys. David, I've run into you a couple of times, and I saw you this weekend, actually, but you were talking most of the time. I had to be in Birmingham for business this week, and so I noticed my calendar, there's a Eucharistic Congress Friday and Saturday in Birmingham, so there was no way I was going to leave when I discovered that.
Oh.
And so I want to talk about it just for a minute, and then I have a question to ask, a bigger question. The procession was just magnificent, and I didn't really realize there were that many Catholics in North Alabama. In Lower Alabama, we've got a part of France, but most of them, I think, were down at the conference, and a lot walking the procession. What I won't say surprised me, but what I noticed was the reaction of people on the side of the road, and may not have known about it, but just saw us marching, probably pretty certainly realized who it was and what we were doing, maybe, and the positive reaction. That's a different Birmingham than existed in the 60s for sure.
No doubt.
They would have thrown rocks.
They would have been met with they would have, or there would have been a counter KKK rally or something like that. Because my family in Lower Alabama, where Mobile, where there's a few more of us, we got those kind of protests and that kind of thing happen. But anyway, so I was able to go back in the middle of the night for a couple hours of adoration early in the morning, and then back for the sessions. And it's like the people you guys had presenting were just top notch, and they were right on point to this idea of, okay, Bishop Baker, seeing this need to evangelize the culture. I mean, the wheels are coming off at this point.
Well, thank you, Steve. How can we help you today? We're kind of running short on time here.
One more point, and then I'll ask the question because it leads right into it.
Okay.
All right. I see that the thing starting maybe at the Reformation, and the church's authority was questioned. Well, that glass is just shattered, and now it's like, how many genders are there? It seems like there's a same underlying problem there. It's just rejection of authority and the things we've known. And so what I want to know is, Bishop Baker, I know you work for the diocese, does he see a path back? I mean, okay, now that we've had this conference and our awareness is raised, what do we do about it? I guess that's my question.
Okay, thanks. Well, so I'll speak. Since you asked about Bishop Baker's perspective, I'll give you what I believe to be the bishop's point of view, and then I'll add some thoughts myself. The sort of the organizing theme of the conference was the Eucharist and missionary discipleship. And if you have read Pope Francis's apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, it's all about how to evangelize in the world today. And Bishop Baker wrote a pastoral letter. It's available on bhmcatholic.com called Called Form Sent. That's the name of the letter. That's really an application of Pope Francis's philosophy of evangelism applied to the city of Birmingham, the Diocese of Birmingham. And at the heart of that letter, both the bishop's letter and the Pope's letter, is, first of all, the importance of the individual's encounter with Christ. The individual's encounter with Christ. And not just any old encounter, right? I just can't imagine any old Jesus I want, but to encounter Christ as he means for us to encounter him, which is objectively in the Catholic Church. First of all, in the proclamation of the gospel that you call the kerygma, in the communion of the church, and I mean that word very broadly, not only the sacrament of Holy Communion, especially that, but in the communion of the body of Christ itself, in our union with the See of Peter. And that was actually what the papal nuncio, Archbishop Christophe Pierre's homily was about. And then the element of service, that we express our communion with Christ in serving our neighbors, diaconia. And boy, the deacons, man, they love that, and they were on fire this weekend. Those deacons, serving, but not just the deacons, but the whole body of Christ. And one who really embraces that understanding of encountering Christ in his church, in the proclamation of the gospel, in the communion of the body of Christ, in service to the whole world, embodies that in themselves and is persuaded to take that to the world. That's a missionary, a disciple. That's a disciple, one who follows Christ, but with a missionary impulse to take Jesus out into the streets, in Eucharistic procession and many other ways as well, and to make Christ known. So that's the bishop's vision. And my own bishop has done a lot in his episcopate, which unfortunately is coming sadly to an end as he's retired and put his letter in at the Vatican, to try to bring that to bear in multiple spheres. So many people know he has a great heart for those who suffer from addiction.
Yikes.
And what was that? And something just popped up on the computer there.
Sorry about that.
No problem. And so he founded a Cenacolo community for caring for those who are addicted, and it's around the adoration of our Lord and Blessed Sacrament, devotion of the Blessed Mother, daily round of prayers and service and so forth. It's embodied in a concrete community, the Cenacolo community. He had a vision for creating facilities that would enable kids to go out and encounter Christ in the faces of their brethren and in the church. Out in a camping context, he put a lot of time and resources into building up Camp Tekakwitha in our diocese.
Yes.
Many other initiatives as well. He was very keen on the ministry of racial reconciliation and did as much as he could in that department, including hosting an international conference, bringing different denominations, even different religions, black and white together in the conference. Black and white in America, how great the divide. So Bishop has made this a hallmark of his own episcopate since day one. Now, what can we do as lay people I think, all of us have different gifts. And the most important thing is to have a consciousness of a union with Christ in the Catholic Church. That's critical. Union with Christ, relationship with Christ in the Catholic Church, and be inspired by that to take Christ out into the world. And that might be get on the radio and talk about Jesus, if that's your thing. It might mean starting some sort of book study at your office.
Yeah.
Or, I have a lawyer friend in town who has an email chain with Catholic people and around the law firm, and they just and lawyers around Birmingham, and they just kind of pass messages and thoughts and articles and so forth. And sometimes non-Catholics get in on that train, and lo and behold, the next thing you know, they're Catholics.
Yeah.
So you find your way of engaging. You invite people to Mass. We live in a great era of social communication. Nobody has gotten more mileage out of that for the church than Bishop Robert Barron. And man, he has ridden that train, like nobody's business. That's millions of people have encountered a positive presentation of the gospel, an intelligent presentation of the gospel through the social media witness of Bishop Robert Barron. I mean, the ways are infinite.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, we thank you so much for your call, and thanks for your kind words as well about your experience with the Eucharistic Congress. It was a fantastic weekend for sure. Call to Communion here on EWTN. We'll get to our next call in just a moment. I want to tell you a little bit about our other radio service, and that is EWTN Radio Classics. And you probably heard a little kerfluffle there as we were taking that call. That's because I accidentally clicked on Radio Classics and it started playing. We don't want to do that. It is a separate channel from the main EWTN radio feed, but it's fantastic. You can get 24/7 teaching and devotionals. That's what Radio Classics is all about. Programs like The Best of the Journey Home, Mother Angelica Live Classics. EWTN presents Father George Rutler, Father Andrew Apostoli, The Best of Bookmark, Life is Worth Living with Archbishop Fulton Sheen. These are just a few of the great programs that are carried each and every day, 24 hours a day on EWTN Radio Classics. You can check it out yourself by going to EWTNradio.net. Click on it where it says EWTN Radio Classics. It'll start playing for you the way it did for me. Or you can pick it up on the app, the EWTN Radio app, which is a free download for your mobile device. Or you can just say, Alexa, play EWTN Radio Classics, and boom, there you go. Do check it out. It is a wonderful source for your own spiritual journey. Call to Communion here on EWTN. Let's go now to Susan in Pittsburgh, listening on Sirius XM, Channel 130. Hey, Susan, what's on your mind today?
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
My question has to do with my son. He was raised Catholic, went to Catholic grade school, high school, even went to a Catholic college that was Jesuit-based. And he was pretty devout until he went away to college. And then when he came home, no more attending church and didn't know what he believed in anymore. At any rate, he's engaged to another girl that was raised Catholic, but they both decided to get married outside the church and want to get their church blessed next year in Rome. And have given me the assignment of finding out how to do that. But I don't really understand any of that. Like, is there even such a thing as getting your marriage blessed if you're not married in the church?
Okay, thanks. I really appreciate the question. I wish I could talk to him and find out what it is that he seeks to gain. I mean, that's what I'd really like to. What does he want out of this trip to Rome? Mm-hmm. This may not be it. I don't want to misstate what he's after, but it could be that they want the kind of convenience of a marital relationship outside the church, and they want the sentimental romanticism of a trip to Rome with a lot of fanfare. Mm-hmm. What they seem not to care about is the sacrament. And that's a bit wrong. Well, it's more than a bit wrong-headed. because marriages are not constituted by, formed in, or persevere through romantic sentiment or sentimental attachment. Sentiment comes and goes. I mean, you wake up one day and you hate your spouse's guts. It happens all the time. All right, what do? Well, you stay in there. You find a way to stop hating your spouse's guts. Right. And if your interest in the ceremonials is a form of sentimentalism, you'll never make it. What you need is the sacrament. The sacrament is grace to endure when you hate your spouse. And you need to find a way to stop hating them. Or they hating you. Or your child dies, or you get cancer, or somebody gets a steel rod through their head, or some horrible tragedy comes, and you're like, how am I going to make it? You're not going to make it unless you have the grace of the sacrament. And it is better to get married, in a wooden barn of a church, in the middle of nowhere, in broiling hot July without air conditioning, and have Kool-Aid at the reception than it is to have all the fanfare in the world, in the fanciest dresses and the greatest party, and all the romanticism of a trip to Rome, if you are not seeking to achieve a sacramental union in the church. Of what good is all that fanfare and romanticism? None at all. Makes for some nice pictures. What are you going to do with them in the divorce?
Yeah. Wow.
Right? Maybe that's not what he's aiming at. I don't know what he's aiming at. Would I participate? Would I try to facilitate this? Well, I don't think I would. This is tough. This is really, really tricky, right? And I guess I would ask. I would really ask. Are you asking me how we can have your marriage regularized so that you can actually achieve a sacramental marriage? Mm-hmm. Is that what you're aiming at? But you want to do that in Rome. Is that what you're asking me to do? I will facilitate seeing that you procure the sacrament, any shape, form, fashion, or place, right? I'll move that ball down the field. I'm not interested, if that's what you mean by blessing. If by blessing you mean render an invalid union valid, yeah, I'll move that ball down the field. You want something else? I don't know that I want to play that game.
Yeah, for sure. Susan, thank you so much for your call. Hope that is helpful for you. And by all means, ask your son to call the program, right, David?
Yeah, to be sure.
We'd love to chat with him. A couple of people we could not get on the air today because we flat ran out of time. So I would encourage you folks to please call us back tomorrow when we're back on the air at 2 p.m. Eastern Time here on EWTN. So another fast-moving hour. Here comes the music in 3, 2, 1. Boom. Now, here comes the music. You ready? There it is. You hear it?
You were off a second.
I was just a little bit. Yeah. My brain has a little latency, I think, left over from the weekend. Dr. David Anders, thank you, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Tom.
We do the program Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern live here on EWTN Radio. Each and every day, we are blessed to have you with us. We also encore that same show at 11 p.m. Eastern in case you missed all or part of it during the day. We can also bring you the best of Call to Communion. Our producer, Charles, picks out what he thinks is the best show of the week. I know it's a tough choice for him, but somehow he does it. And we play that for you on Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can check out the podcast anytime by going to EWTNradio.net. On behalf of Charles, Ryan, and Jeff, I'm Tom Price along with Dr. David Anders. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow here on Call to Communion. Have a great day and God bless.